An entitled Karen gets really angry and aggressive when I refuse to get out of her way when getting off of a plane. Things got so bad that she even eventually ended up pushing me just to get me out of the way. And I've honestly never been more astonished by somebody's behavior in my life. Here's what happened. I'm convinced that there is nothing worse than a mother at an airport. Coming back from Cuba, I noticed this family right away at the Vanderoo airport because they were loud and the mother had a perma scowl on her face, which is probably why she looked like she was in her late 60s rather than her mid 40s, which is probably a more accurate age. Getting on the plane, they were pushing everyone in line as they tried to move forward because, you know, the plane with the assigned seating will definitely leave without them if they don't get on first. The mother in question was sitting in the row behind me but across the aisle. At one point, I could feel someone staring at me, so I looked back and she was blatantly staring at me with the most disgusted look on her face. Probably because of my tattoos, honestly. I mean, she seemed like the type, but I just thought to myself, whatever. Then we get off the plane and she tried to push past me instead of waiting her turn, but of course I didn't let her because it's plane etiquette. Then as we're going through the hall towards customs, she's running down the hall, an angry face firmly in place and telling her kids to hurry up. I mean, it's not like we're all going to the same place, Karen. Of course, I get through customs before her and I'm the first one at the baggage claim because I planned ahead and I travel frequently. So I'm standing right at the part of the baggage carousel where the bags start to come out and suddenly I'm pushed aside. And guess what? It's this entitled Karen. But regardless, I try to hold my tongue. The bag starts coming out and one gets stuck, so I go to put it back on the carousel to help out the owner. And that's when I hear the loudest, rudest voice in the world. This Karen screeches, "Excuse me." She says this behind me, and then she pushes me aside again to grab her kid's bag. Now, because the carousel isn't huge, she just had to stand as close to me as possible. And when she did that, that is when I snapped. I just looked at her and I said, "Wow, lady." Then she starts yapping at me like an annoying little dog, saying how she is helping her kids and she was being polite. I just retorted that she clearly hates her life, and she is obviously the type of person who screams at customer service employees. She keeps going and she's slowly giving me a headache. But you know what? It is simply not worth my time. So I said to her, "Honey, you need to shut your mouth right now." And trust me, when I said that, she did not like that one bit. She liked it even less when I started laughing at her. I could tell she is definitely a jerk and has never really been called out on her behavior ever in her life. My bag eventually came before the rest of her stupid bags, and I ended up leaving her there, yapping like the annoying creature that she is. The best part is that neither her husband nor her teenage children stood up for her. In fact, her husband looked exhausted by her behavior. So parents, please, if traveling causes you to be rude and annoying, just don't do it. Stay at home instead and leave the rest of us in peace. Yeah, that's honestly really funny to me because this lady hit all of the entitled marks to basically make her a really terrible person to be around. For starters, she was trying to get off the plane before people ahead of her. Like, I don't know about you, but that really is common courtesy to literally just wait your turn and wait for people ahead of you to go down the aisle. I don't even mind if someone like stands up because some people like they can't really sit for long periods of time, so they have to stand up to like stretch their legs and not be cramped. Like, I totally get that. But if you're physically pushing people out of the way just to get your bag or get off the airplane, then you, my friend, are a horrible person. But I really love how the original poster handled this. They basically called her out on her garbage and made her look like a complete idiot. And I think the original poster is right. They probably have never been called out before like that, which is why she was left floundering, not sure what to do. And honestly, people like that really should be called out a lot more, especially if they're going to get up in other people's faces and cause problems for people around them. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, link down below in the description. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Am I the jerk for refusing to beg for an invite to my stepsister's wedding? Here's what happened. So my stepsister's dad married my mom when we were 7 and 6. I never knew my parents together, and from what I was made aware of, they had made a very brief relationship and I was the result. I have a sister from a dad who is 3 years older than me, but no siblings on my mom's side. My parents shared custody of me during my childhood, but I always preferred my dad's house. I was always closer to my dad than my mom, and I always loved being around my sister. My stepsister used to adore me and think that we were sisters and best friends forever. She had no siblings, so to her, I was that sibling. We were about 14 and 15 when she found out I didn't feel the same way about her. She read my homework one night, and I had to write up a personal piece from a topic of choices. And the choices were basically different family members numbers and relationship types, and I just went with siblings. She was really upset after learning I didn't consider her one of my siblings and never even did. She stopped being so into me after that, which really wasn't a big deal to me. She did grow up to be more resentful of me when we were in our early 20s because I moved into an apartment with my sister, which she learned about from my mom. The few times that I saw her after that, she was always very snarky when asking if I liked having a sister that much, and how nice it must be to be loved back. Well, my stepsister is now getting married, and she didn't even send me an invite. It upset my mom and her husband a lot, and they asked why, and she told me that I'm not her sister. She stated that she just doesn't care about me, and that I would not even want to be there in the first place. Well, my mom chimed in and said that I should ask her to invite me and even beg if I have to. She told me that otherwise it will look so awful as if we're not even family. And when my mom requested this, I just refused. My mom said that I should be upset to miss out on her big day, and I clearly told her that I did not care. My mom said that I should, and I should be willing to do this for her if nothing else. So I need to know, am I the jerk for not begging my stepsister to invite me to her wedding? Honestly, this is kind of like cut and dry, because it seems like the two of you established this relationship a long time ago. For starters, you secretly never even liked her as a sibling in the first place, and you know what, at least you had the decency of keeping that to yourself and not expressing that to her. But also, it really seems like this deeply affected her, and she took this incredibly personally, which I can completely understand. So it kind of makes sense as to why she wouldn't invite you to the wedding. There does seem to be a rift between the two of you, and it does seem like she just doesn't want you there. So I don't think you're the jerk for not wanting to go to this wedding, and not wanting to like beg your stepsister to allow you to go, because it really seems like the both of you just don't want each other there. And I think at the very least, this is something that you both can seriously agree on. Because just think about the opposite end of this, like seriously. If you went up to her and suddenly, after years of just not really liking each other, said to her, "Oh please, let me be a part of your wedding," or something like that, in my opinion, I think that would be way worse than just accepting it and being like, okay, I'm just not going to be at this wedding, I guess. But I do have to say that it really is sad that your stepsister held on to this weird petty grudge for such a long time. According to the original poster, they further explained that they never hated them and they never like bullied them or anything like that. They simply did not feel the same way that their stepsister felt about them, and that's honestly like where it began and ended. It doesn't seem like there's some like deep-seated hatred from the original poster, but instead it really seems like it's being harbored by the stepsister in this situation. But in my opinion, I think it's very important to respect her wishes, and if that means you're not going to show up to her wedding, then so be it. My stepmother triggered my food allergy seemingly on purpose, and now when I try to discuss it with her and try and go over what was in the food that she made, she is now refusing to talk to me, and at this point, I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. Okay, for a bit of context to start things out, I'm a 24-year-old female and I still live with my stepmom while working and going to school. Yesterday, I went to help a friend move out of his house, and I left the house in a rush. I went to tell my stepmom that I was leaving and I was running late, and she seemed to be upset that I didn't say good morning before telling her I was leaving. I told her I was sorry and that I was in a bit of a hurry and I would be seeing her later. I got home at around 4 o'clock, and sometimes when I'm out all day, she'll ask if I've eaten anything, so she knows if she needs to cook an extra portion. Well, she was still in a bad mood when I got home, but I figured that she just had a bad day, so I said hello. Then I went to my room and I took a nap. When I came to get dinner a few hours later, she was already in her room, so I just served myself and I went back to my room. What she failed to mention though was that something in the stew I ate had something I was allergic to. After throwing up, I texted her to ask her what was in the stew, mostly so I could know if I need to take a Benadryl or if I just need to sleep it off. Now, my reaction wasn't too severe, so I didn't really need my EpiPen. Well, she just leaves me on red. I drink some warm tea to open up my throat and then I go back to bed. This morning, I go to greet her and I ask her again what was in the stew, but she just stays silent. I ask if something is wrong and she starts imitating my body posture in a mocking way, still not saying anything. I ask her what the problem is and she just rolls her eyes and turns away from me. So I get my stuff and I leave. Now, here's the thing. My stepmom is very cognizant of my allergies, and sometimes she'll make a whole separate dish for me when she's eating something that I can't. I try to show my appreciation for her since she's a stay-at-home mom, and it's really helpful when I'm working and going to school to not have to worry about food. I'm trying not to make any crazy assumptions, but I am very upset that this has happened, and I now seriously don't know what to do. Okay, so this is a seriously scary situation, because based on what you've described, it kinda seems like your stepmom did that on purpose. And if that's the case, I personally would not feel safe to live there any longer if I was in your shoes. Because her history basically points to her being more aware of your allergies, as well as her trying to take like deliberate steps just so you don't get sick from what she's eating. So when you ask her, hey, what's going on? What did you put in the stew? And she's just sitting there doing nothing about it and not responding in any kind of way, that in my opinion is a massive red flag, and that is seriously unsafe. Like, it really seems from the outside looking in that she straight up tried to poison you. And that, in my opinion, would be more than enough reason for me to start calling friends and start asking whose couch I can sleep on until I find a place to live. Because what she did is unacceptable. And in my opinion, it really seems like she did that on purpose. My grandfather's entitled children tried to hide the fact that he passed away in the hospital and also tried to secretly hold a funeral just so that my grandmother and the rest of my family could be left out of my grandfather's funeral. And I'm honestly blown away by someone's entitlement as well as how evil somebody truly can be. Here's what happened. Okay, so my grandfather passed away when I was just a baby. When I was older, my Nana married a new man, a widower who I called Grandpa Walt. He was the only maternal grandfather that I knew, so I considered him my family. I didn't know this during the decade that I knew him, but his children from his previous marriage did not feel the same about my Nana. They did not believe in remarriage and considered her the most evil person in history for tempting their father from his vows to their deceased mother. They refused to see him in the home that my Nana owned, so that when he got older and had difficulty leaving the house on his own, they mostly just stopped seeing him for years. He had never mentioned his kids, so I knew nothing about them. Eventually, he started getting bad enough that prolonged hospital stays were getting more frequent, and he needed to be in and out of full-time care. Whenever he was in the hospital, she would visit him until he could return home. They had been snowbirds, spending winters in Florida and summers in Michigan, but because of his health, they had not been able to go to their Florida home in many years. They decided that she would go down for a week or two to make sure the home was okay and start the process of selling it before its value dropped from lack of maintenance, while he was safely in full-time care with staff they had known and trusted for years. Then they could use the money from the sale for his care. I went to visit him the day after he left to make sure he was doing okay. His son and daughter were there, and it was the first time I had ever seen them. I had barely even been aware of their existence, but I figured out who they were from their context. I said hello and I tried to introduce myself, and they pretended as though I was invisible and that they hadn't heard anything I said. They were literally acting like children, so I just sat awkwardly in a chair. They proceeded to stand there for over an hour, talking right in front of me to Grandpa Walt about how evil my Nana was, that she would abandon him in some dirty hospital and run off spending all of his money partying in Florida, and how they hoped he would remember that when it came to his will. It should be noted that my Nana, while by no means wealthy, had a lot more money than he did, and all of their property was hers from decades before she even met him. She was also an elderly woman with a hip replacement who had to use a walker, and this is the kind with yellow tennis balls on the legs, so she was in no condition to be partying in Miami or whatever they thought she was doing. Well, he never once responded. He just stared straight ahead with glazed over eyes. I wasn't sure if he even heard anything they said. He was not looking very well, but I knew he always had his ups and downs, so I didn't imagine anything was unusual. But I was flabbergasted. Looking back, I wish I had spoken up, but I was a teenager at the time in a hospital room full of sick and dying people, and I didn't know how to fight back without causing a huge scene. Eventually, I just took a brief pause in their rant to stand up and tell Grandpa Walt that I had to go, and that we all loved him and his wife would be home soon after she took care of the house issues. The entitled son and daughter spoke to me for the first time, telling me that I didn't need to come back because they would be there for him and I was not his family. I then rushed to my parents' house and I told them what happened, and they filled me in on their issues. And it seemed like even if they seemed awful, I knew it wasn't my place to try and keep them from their father. So I stayed away and I gave them time to catch up and hope that when I wasn't there, they could just catch up and figure out their relationship. Well, a few days later, my Nana got a very strange call from the hospital. A nurse that she knew very well from Grandpa Walt's hospital called her up and asked her how she was. Well, my Nana was fine. The nurse then awkwardly asked her, well, do you know? My Nana asked, no what? And then the woman broke down. Grandpa Walt had passed away nearly 24 hours ago. His son and daughter had forbidden the hospital from contacting my Nana and said that they would let everyone know about the funeral funeral arrangements. I have no idea what weird loophole caused higher-ups of the hospital to follow along with this, but his nurse sensed something was up and took a risk calling to make sure that my Nana knew. So it was equally as devastating to find out that she did not. I mean, none of us did. They were attempting to hide his passing and hurried up to hold a funeral before any of us found out. The nurse let us know where and when the funeral was taking place, and my Nana called all of us on the way to the airport to let us know. We started the phone tree to our whole family, and soon after she was back and we were all on our way to the funeral. The look of rage and disgust we got when we walked into my own grandfather's funeral, especially what my Nana got for walking into her own husband's funeral, was terrifying. They glared angrily, and you could see that they wanted to scream and throw us out, but decided not to cause a scene. Instead, his daughter walked up and grabbed a fruit basket off the table. She announced that she was putting it in her car, and if any of her guests wanted fruit, they could ask her and she would go to get it in the car, because she didn't want just anyone eating her fruit. The son and daughter gave speeches about how their father was finally in heaven, back with his one true love, their mother, and finally free from those who tried to tear their love apart. The staff of the funeral home eventually clued into the weird dynamic and found a way to put my Nana's car in the front of the procession when neither of Grandpa Walt's kids were looking, just to give her a brief moment of respect. She was ticked off, but there was nothing that she could do. These people thought their own opinions on the definition of "till death do us part" entitled them to hide my Nana's husband's passing from her, hold their own funeral, and surely they spent days pressuring their father to cut her out of his will. And I wish I could have seen their faces when they found out that none of the property they were salivating over was even owned by him. It was a terrible, painful day for her to have to fight her way into her own husband's funeral. I was very sad, but I could not help but laugh at the fruit basket thing. It just came out automatically. It was the saddest, most petty, most evil, pathetic power grab I've ever seen in my life. Wow, these people seriously are some of the worst people on planet Earth. Like, I can't imagine someone being so evil that they would try to deny their father's wife, even though it's not his original wife, the opportunity to go to his funeral and grieve his passing. Like, seriously, you have to be so unbelievably twisted to pull that off, all under the guise of you being like justified for it. Which, by the way, their justification for the way they treated this Nana is completely uncalled for. People get remarried when their spouse passes away all the time. Like, this literally happens all the time and there's no conflict. I personally find no conflict with that, and anyone who does and then openly is combative with that person for the rest of their father's existence, in my opinion, is one of the worst types of people on planet Earth. Because this behavior didn't need to happen. They could have just let this guy live his life in peace and not try to attack their father's new wife in some kind of weird way. So what they did is so unacceptable, and I seriously hope for the sake of you and the rest of your family, you all never have to deal with that side of your family ever again. My boyfriend gave me a marriage ultimatum, stating that I only have the weekend to figure out if I want to marry him. And right now, I am stuck feeling unsure of everything, and I seriously don't know what to do. Here's what happened. So, to start things out, on Friday, my boyfriend asked me to deeply consider marriage over the weekend, and that I have until Monday to give him my answer. Now, here's the thing. We've been dating for over a year. He needs to marry for immigration and religious reasons. He's been living here for almost 10 years and is supposed to have an upcoming court case this year regarding his immigration status. Also, according to his religion, dating is not allowed. He told me he needs to make this next step in his life and that he has to do better in practicing his faith. Now, he is broke and he has a poor credit score. In his religion, the man is responsible for his wife, so I'm just wondering how I would be taken care of if this is his current situation. I don't feel comfortable getting married if we're going to be struggling financially right from the get-go. I would like to at least have a plan in place, but he thinks that is something that we can worry about later on. Yesterday, I went to talk to a priest, and he said me and my boyfriend can set up a meeting to discuss marriage. My boyfriend would like to have a religious ceremony from his faith, so I feel it's only fair to have one from mine as well. I called my boyfriend to tell him about making an appointment, and he refused. He said Monday is the deadline, and I thought he meant as in give him an answer and start planning, but no, he means Monday as in go to the courthouse and get married that day. He also told me this past year that we've been dating that he's gotten many opportunities from women that are interested in marrying him. He said he declined or ignored all of them because he wants to be with me. Now, I don't know if this this is true or if he's trying to make me jealous, but I ended up talking to my mom about it, and she said she feels he is brainwashing me and that I should not be pressured into this. She suggested not to make any big decisions right now. This all just doesn't feel right. Is this manipulation on his part? I mean, how do I move forward? What should I do? Let me tell you something. If I had a giant red flag that I could start waving around like crazy, I would do that literally right now, because what your boyfriend is doing is insane in my opinion. He's demanding that you get married on Monday to him right then and there at the courthouse. And it does seem like he's putting the pressure on you and trying to guilt trip you into doing this. I mean, I'm right there with the original poster. I kind of thought, just like the original poster, that she had until Monday to decide to get married and then they would start planning out their marriage. But no, this guy's like, we're gonna get married on Monday and we're gonna go to the courthouse, while also implying that there's other women he could go to if she doesn't want to do it. But that just seems like a lie, because he's like, oh yeah, there's all kinds of other women that will marry me. Like, what are you talking about? Is he dating other people behind your back? If that's the case, then he's probably cheating on you or something like that. Like, that just seems like a really outlandish statement that's not completely true. And it's also really concerning about how much pressure he's putting on you to get married right now. Like, there's no time to think about this or figure out the situation. He's like really trying to be like, no, come Monday morning, we're going to the courthouse and getting married. That, in my opinion, is super sketchy. And I know if I was in your shoes, there is no way I would get married right away, all because somebody is demanding it, seemingly just so they can make some kind of step in their immigration status. Because at the end of the day, I seriously think these two are connected, and I just don't think it's right for your boyfriend to pressure you in this way. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. To finish listening to all the stories, check out the playlist at the top of the description. And if you want some chill music to put on in the background, check out Easy Mode. If you like Am I the Jerk, subscribe to Am I the Genius. Everything will be linked down below in the description.